The COVID-19 pandemic is wreaking havoc in countries across the globe, causing a global health crisis and forcing economies to slow down due to the strict quarantine measures. However, the outbreak has also impacted the environment in an intriguing way. As the pandemic spreads in different parts of the world, its consequences run farther than just closed borders, scarce and hand sanitizers, and social distancing protocols. Reports from the Kenya Meteorological Department claim the impact of COVID-19 has had varying impacts on climate change, both positive and negative impacts. In many African cities, minibuses are the main mode of public transport, complemented by motorcycles. It is estimated that some 90% of urban air pollution in developing countries is attributable to vehicle emissions. However, the pandemic has slowed transport and many activities. And has this been a positive impact to the environment? Speak to us and share your feedback on this discussion through our SMS line 111 or on our social media handles at Switch TV Kenya, at Lincoln Ombogo. Has the air you breathe gotten much better? My name is Lincoln Ombogo and this is Frontline. Today we'll try to help make you understand what climate change really is and what are its effects. Our senior reporter and anchor Emmanuel Terer breaks down one of them.
Lake Turkana is the largest lake desert in the world. Located in the northwest side of Kenya, it borders Marsabit and Turkana County, measuring about 249 kilometers long, 48 kilometers wide and 35 meters deep. Rivers flowing to Lake Turkana are River Omo, Takwel River and Kerio River. At the shores of the lake, there is life, beehive of activities, children swimming unaware of the looming spill. From the look of things, it has not been all rosy. Hopelessness written all over this former village as the water continues to rise. Waters collected all the way from River Omo in Ethiopia and deposited here, wreaking havoc.
Because the water is rising every day, because the rains that are raining in Ethiopia, because the biggest river that is bringing water to Lake Turkana is from River Omo.
Someone used to call this home, but they had to leave because of the surge in the waters. Lake Turkana is filling and people are fleeing to look for another home.
Over 300 families, actually, households have been displaced in Lake Turkana. So, but the situation is changing every single day.
To meet the families, one need to cross over shallow waters. According to the residents, floods began in July this year.
Maji kaleta shida hapa, tukama mara ya kwanza kidogo. Tukakuja tena hapa karibu mali mmetoka msemtai nyumba mabati. Sisi tena tukakuja tukajenga hapa. Wengine wenzetu wakasonga mbele. Sasa tumebambana mambo ya maji mwezi wa 7, mwezi wa 9. Mpaka sijui tuseme mwezi wa 10.
For those who could not stand the floods, they chose to move to a different place. This is the third time it's happening.
Maji ikaendelea kukua mingi. Kufika mwezi wa 8, tukasongesha tena wanakijiji wote, tukaenda mahali pakapu. Sasa maji bado inaendelea kukua mingi kufita kiasi. Na hata leo hii, boma zetu nyingine imebaki kwa maji.
Hakika sisi tunahangaika, mara kidogo maji inasonga na sisi tunasonga. Maji inasonga na sisi tunasonga. Tunaishi kwa mikeka. Tunaomba serikali itusaidie.
According to Kenya Meteorological Department, there is a possibility of receiving high rainfall towards the end of this year. Kenya Red Cross is working closely with the county government and other agencies within the multi-agency coordination framework to secure lives of residents living along Lake Turkana.
Thank you, Emmanuel Terer. We are joined by Patricia Nyinguro, a climate scientist from the Kenya Meteorological Department. We also joined by Robert Omondi Achoge, the Director of Communications at Chemolex Limited, an organization that aims to deliver impactful and sustainable solutions in waste management and renewable energy. Thank you so much for creating time. Immediately, I'll start with you, Patricia, and I'll need to get your quick reaction from the story that just aired. Now, for over a decade, the lakes of Rift Valley have been swelling, swallowing land and villages. I mean, Patricia, what is the main cause of this?
Well, we had the opportunity to travel to those areas and survey and even talk to the residents to see how long this has been happening. And what was noteworthy was that from around 2012, they started to see the rise in lakes. And the main cause of this has been increasing rainfall throughout the rainfall seasons, the March to May and the October to December. So the rainfall amounts within the Rift Valley lakes, all the way from Turkana coming down to Lake Bogoria, rainfall has been increasing. And so the water has been collected and has been rising in the lakes.
Robert, are we going to see an end of this?
Not anytime soon. If we really don't change the way we do our day-to-day lives, we are not going to see that. In fact, it's going to get worse.
What do you mean not any day soon?
Because of, well, I can mainly attribute this to the climate change. And the climate change is directly caused by human activities. And we are talking, the main culprits, we are talking about transport, we are talking about farming, we are talking about oil drilling. And these are things that drive the economy per se. So if we don't change the way we do things, or if we don't stop it per se, the climate change effect is still going to come. And we have like, well, scientifically we are about 7 billion years, but that's not a lot of years. But if from the way things are, if we continue, we may have less than maybe 2 billion years, if you ask me.
Now, COVID-19 is affecting the lives of millions of people and also the environment. The carbon dioxide emissions and human mobility have been reduced, which improves air quality. But how sustainable is this positive effect in the long term? I mean, has COVID-19 brought about positive or negative effects to climate change? Patricia?
Well, there have been studies that have been done in some parts of the world to kind of quantify the impact that probably reduced transportation, especially in the aviation and road sectors, have had on carbon dioxide emissions. And on the short term, there really has been a reduction. But once transport came back up, this has been seen to kind of pick up just where it left off. And another thing that we need to notice is, or take into account, is that even though the aviation is one of the emitters of carbon dioxide, it is by far not the highest. And so if we only look at this as a positive impact and lacks towards reducing emissions in other areas, then it would be detrimental to us. So studies have shown that 73% of carbon dioxide emission comes from the energy sector. Out of this 73, only 16 comes from transport. So the reduction, even though it has been there, is quite minimal and has not been sustained, because currently we see people are already starting to travel back, and therefore the emissions will continue. So we need to find better sustainable ways of reducing carbon dioxide emissions.
Has COVID-19 brought about a positive or negative effects to climate?
Well, it has definitely it has brought positive effects because of that short term when everything was down. We're talking about early 2020 when transport was down, aviation was down, commuting was down, and even there were some even memes saying that Mother Nature is coming back alive. We could see now birds walking freely, and that short time that everything was locked down, science shows that up to 25% of carbon emissions was reduced. And this only came about to show us that we can actually change our activities and coexist in a fulfilling environment if we just change the way you're doing things.
Patricia, Robert here says that we need to share ideas, on how we can reduce these rising water levels and, reduce the negative climate change effects. Patricia, what are some of the ideas that you can share with us?
Well, he's very right. Tackling climate change is really beyond one institution or one government, and therefore the sharing is what may be the key towards solving this crisis. Very many different players within the sector have different roles to play. For example, as the meteorological department, we have the role or the mandate of providing information that is accurate and in a timely manner to enable other actors to then take on their part. So when we provide this information regarding what we expect in the future in terms of climate change, then other arms of government, for example, Ministry of Agriculture, can be able to project food production and then plan based on that. And I also like to say that tackling climate change really is an individual responsibility. So we can't always just ask what is the government doing, but we can ask ourselves on a small scale, what am I personally doing? Am I wasting food? Am I wasting water? Am I using sustainable means of transport? And if this done collectively, we can be able to achieve a lot towards reducing carbon dioxide emission, because that really is the cause of global warming and hence climate change.
Yeah, at this point, I'm prompted to ask, how severe is the climate change crisis?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And I have an answer that is also very interesting. So in the Northern Hemisphere is experiencing their summer currently. And in Canada, they've had the climate records, or the maximum temperature record, being broken for a consecutive 4 days. There's a city or a town that has seen deaths of up to 170 people. If that is not evidence of what climate change can have as an impact on society, then I really don't know what else we need to see. So deaths are already being seen from drought, from flooding, from heat waves. We are already seeing these impacts. In Kenya, we have seen a change in seasons. We have very, very cold seasons, and then we have droughts following thereafter. So really, the evidence is there that climate change is already impacting our society.
Still on you, for any change to occur, especially in Kenya, we have about more than 70.5% of the population is the youth. How has the Kenya Meteorological Department engaged the youth in ensuring that, climate change and positive climate change is realized?
Something noteworthy that we have done is increase our presence within social media, especially because the youth have the power to enact change, and we realize that. So we have a very good presence on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and even on Instagram. And as a plug, our handle is Meteor Kenya on Twitter. You can follow us. So we provide information there regularly on seasonal forecast, daily forecast. We engage with people. We are able to answer questions that come up. For example, I remember when we had the issues of cyclones, we had an entire almost 2 days where we just engaged with the people on Twitter, and we were able to answer a lot of questions.
Now, can cold weather impact COVID-19 severity? Here's Dr. Timothy Olubayo's take.
Previous studies concerning other viral infection, just like COVID, because COVID is a viral infection, that have been done have proven that the spread of viral infection is increased when there is a change in temperatures from high temperatures to low temperatures. Mostly the respiratory tract, the viruses that cause respiratory tract infections. And considering that COVID is a viral infection, enters the body through the respiratory tract and other exposed mucosal linings, there is a high likelihood that spread also of COVID-19 is increased when there is a change in temperature and absolute humidity, more so a change from hot, warm temperatures to cold temperatures.
Robert, tell us about your program of converting waste material into useful things.
Interesting.
And those useful things, tell us about them too.
Awesome. So as Chemolex, we realized that most of the areas that we're doing our business was, the low-income settlements. We're talking about Kariobangi, we're talking about Dandora. And then, so when moving about, we found that there's so much plastic that was being strewn around. So we came up with a novel initiative to construct devices that we construct across rivers. And then after constructing, we identify youth groups that are already existing in these places. We're talking about women groups, we're talking about youth groups below the ages of 35. So after that, we train these youth groups. on how to, proper waste management, on how to, create entrepreneurial businesses around waste management. And then we install this device near their places. So this device is such that it traps anything that is floating, any plastic that is floating above the surface of the water. Then it conveys it outside the water. On this, at this level is where the youth now are engaged. They sort these plastics into different plastics. We're talking about PET, we're talking about high density polypropylene, we're talking about different types of plastics, around 9 different types. So after that, they are taken to a facility whereby we shred them into pieces and then we convert them into construction materials. We're talking about bricks, we're talking about pavement blocks, we're talking about plastic poles, and stuff like that.
Thank you very much, Robert. Patricia, how should the government, adapt, or what measures should the government take or set up to help reduce inevitable effects of climate change?
Well, the main thing that personally I feel the government can be able to do, and the Kenya Meteorological Department is part of government, is make use of the very abundant scientific information that is out there that outlines what we expect and what measures need to be taken in advance of the adverse impacts that we expect of climate change. There are a lot of reports that are out there that show with every sector what we can expect in the future in terms of impacts of climate change. So policy needs to be geared towards development of adaptation options and mitigation options that will cushion the country or the residents of the country against these impacts that we are seeing. That is the biggest way. The second way, or an additional way that government can be able to contribute to combating climate change, is actually to implement these. So once policy is developed by policymakers, then government can be able to spearhead the implementation of these adaptation and mitigation options, especially for those regions that are generally resource poor. And so with financial support from the government, they can be able to implement options that will cushion them for years to come. I think that's the main way that the government can be able to support these initiatives.
Well, that's Patricia's take.
Yeah, first of all, the government should, support individual organizations and companies. For instance, what Chemolex is doing, for instance. We need a lot of, hands-on. We need a lot of, equipment. If you can just get, that little support, holding hands, and in-kind support. For instance, when we install a device in a certain section of the rivers, right now we've installed about 10. We are looking at 10 different locations across dispersed places. We're talking about River Mbagathi, River Nairobi, and River Ngong. So if the government can help us in terms of maintaining these devices, the youth that we work with, we give them some little stipend at the end of the week because they can't work for free. So if the government can help us in facilitating some of these things, in getting us tools, we're talking about rakes, we're talking about chambers, and protective equipment, that will go a long way. And then the other thing that we're looking at is big companies and even the government, if they can do something called adopting a river, take a section of a river, because our rivers are dead, they're dead. Can adopt a certain section of the river and just say from here to here, we'll be getting some inputs and getting used to work here and getting organizing cleanups every once a month. That will go a long way in helping with the pollution and climate change. That's my take.
Thank you so much, Patricia and Robert, for creating time. However, on the other side, we give you some interesting facts and statistics about climate change. So we may well be busy with the pandemic, but there's still never been a more urgent time than now to act on the climate crisis. Stay tuned. Now, welcome back to Frontline. How well do we know climate change? And are you really being part of the change? Daniel Karaoke breaks down the effects of climate change.
The percentage of disasters attributed to climate and weather-related events has increased from 73% in the 1990s to 76% in the 2000s to 83% in the 2010s. These climate and weather-related disasters have claimed more than 410,000 lives in the past 10 years alone, the vast majority in low and middle-income countries. In the past 10 years, 83% of all disasters triggered by natural hazards were caused by extreme weather and climate-related events such as floods, storms, and heat waves. A further 1.7 billion people around the world have been affected by climate and weather-related disasters during the past decade. This, according to the World Disasters Report 2020. Climate change is not waiting for COVID-19 to be brought under control. Many people are being directly affected by the pandemic and climate-driven disasters all at once, and the world's poorest and most at-risk people are being hit first and hardest. In Kenya alone, lakes across the rift are filling up.
Na hata leo hii boma zetu ingine imebaki kwa maji.
Hakika sisi tunahangaika, mara kidogo maji inasonga na sisi tunasonga. Maji inasonga na sisi tunasonga, tunaishi kwa mikeka.
Then what really are the effects of climate change and global warming? Climate change destabilizes the Earth's temperature equilibrium and has far-reaching effects on human beings, on the environment at large. The direct consequences of man-made climate change include rising maximum temperatures, rising minimum temperatures, rising sea levels, and higher ocean temperatures, among others. So we may well be busy with the pandemic, but there's still never been a more urgent time than now to act on the climate crisis.
The COVID-19 pandemic, Caleb, has shown how vulnerable the world is to a truly global catastrophe. But another bigger catastrophe has been rebuilding for many decades, and how humanity is still lagging far behind in efforts to address it, as communities and countries still need to adapt to its realities. However, in efforts to address these challenges, we have Caleb Kibet, the Kenya Red Cross representative of Baringo County. Thank you so much for joining us, Caleb. How has Baringo County been impacted by climate change, Caleb?
Well, thank you so much. And for Baringo County, due to climate change, we experienced quite a number of challenges, and one of it is rising of lakes. We had quite a number of lakes which were rising, which led to displacement. For instance, Lake Baringo, Lake Bohoria, which actually extended for quite a number of distances. This led to displacement of households due to flooding, which actually affected quite a number of vulnerable households, and equally affecting some of the social amenities, that is the health facilities, submerging of the learning institutions, and equally, of course, due to climate change, also we had been experiencing escalation of droughts, especially in parts of quite a number of sub-counties in the county, which actually has been impacted a lot to the poor households, leading to food insecurity, especially for instance, maybe Tiati sub-county, Baringo North, Baringo South, Mokotio.
Caleb, how has the Kenya Red Cross Society been promoting and enhancing the uptake of nature-based solutions to benefit the environment?
Well, in respect to respond to the challenges or rather maybe the effects of the flooding, Kenya Red Cross at account level, we have been supporting quite a number of interventions. For instance, ensuring we improve the access to safe water for use. And for instance, from 2020 to 2021, we supported rehabilitation or rather maybe upscale of some of the water points for the county, focusing on some of the hardly hit sub-counties. Equally, we supported quite a number of learning institutions in terms of awareness creation on hygiene and sanitation promotions. We also, of course, in terms of curbing the current pandemic in relation to the challenge for the climate change, we equally supported with the hand washing facilities and water treatment chemicals so that can be able to use to enhance hygiene practices.
Hold that thought. Now, when major traumatic events happen, especially disasters, that causes major havoc, including loss of lives and loss of property. Many fall into post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. So how do we overcome PTSD? Here are the tips.
PTSD, in full, is post-traumatic stress disorder, and as the word states, it's post. That means that it occurs when somebody have experienced a very traumatic event. In this case, we say after you experience it after 6 months. So if you see that you still fear to go through or to pass by where an incident happens, it's always good to understand, what am I going through? It is characterized by nightmares. All the time, somebody you keep on dreaming about yourself being harmed. So all the time, the thoughts that at times may not happen again because they are brought by even dreams. how you can manage, there's something we call CBT. That is cognitive behavior therapy. That helps, and you can go through it where you have a professional help you. For example, if somebody can call 1199, we have counselors who can take you through the process on CBT. How do I change my thought from negative to positive? That even if it's happened, it may not happen again. And how do I prepare myself? How do I become aware that during at night I dream about this? All the time I have these thoughts. All the time I'm distracted by the thoughts. Being self-aware, being psychoeducated, and most of all, seeking for therapy is very, very good. And also not running away from people, because people usually help us. Psycho support is very, very important.
Now back to you, Caleb. How far has your reach been as the Kenya Red Cross Society in increasing capacity to adapt to the effects of climate change by enhancing access to safe water?
Well, as I said previously, we had quite a number of course, communities affected due to climate change related challenges. And for us as Kenya Red Cross, we marked some of these most affected areas in terms of water access to safe for drinking and use for domestic and also at household level. We rehabilitated quite a number of water points, especially inter-county, to support access for safe water for drinking and use. Which was actually was hand in hand with training of some of the community in terms of management for these water points. This could be able to help in terms of reducing the, of course, households having trekking for long distances to access water. Equally, of course, for the livestock to access clean water for safe use.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Caleb. That is Caleb, Baringo County representative from the Kenyan Red Cross, for joining us. And that interview wraps up the show. Till next week, wear your mask, maintain social distancing, observe all the necessary guidelines. My name is Lincoln Obogo. Stay safe.